Hello, my name is Claire, and the last Christmas I spent with my mother was the day I finally realised she never saw me as family, just as something to blame when her world didn't look the way she wanted. I woke up early that morning, still hopeful, still foolish in that way only daughters can be when they're chasing something that's never going to come. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Snow was falling outside, thick and quiet. And for a second, I let myself believe it might actually be a good day. Mum was already in the kitchen, slamming cabinet doors. I said good morning. She didn't even look at me. By the time everyone else woke up, she was in full performance mode, laughing too loud, calling my sister her baby, handing out gifts like she was the perfect mother in some Hallmark movie. She didn't get me anything, not even a card. When I tried to brush it off, just be grateful to be there, she sneered at me across the living room. "You're a grown woman." "Claire," she said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the music playing in the background. "Why are you even here? You can't get your own life together." The room got real quiet. My sister shifted awkwardly, pulling her new scarf tighter around her neck. My brother-in-law stared at the TV. Nobody said anything. It was like I had been put on trial, and the jury had already walked out. I felt like a kid again, standing there with nothing in my hands, nothing to say that could make her see me different. The emotional scars from years of being the scapegoat in a toxic family came flooding back, and I realised I had been standing in this exact same spot, feeling this exact same shame too many times before. I picked up my jacket. I grabbed my bag. No yelling, no crying, no asking why. But as I was heading for the door, she gave me one more shot to the gut. "Merry Christmas." "Claire," she said, smiling the coldest smile I have ever seen. "Maybe next year, you'll have something worth celebrating." And just like that, I was out on the front porch, the cold air punching me harder than her words ever could. I stood there for a second, my breath fogging up in front of me, hands shaking not from the cold, but from the bitter, raw rage boiling under my skin. The betrayal was bone deep. How many times had I made excuses for her? How many times had I convinced myself that if I just worked harder, achieved more, was somehow better, she would love me the way I needed? Turns out, some people don't change, they just get meaner. I didn't cry as I walked to my car. Not one tear. I was done crying for her. Instead, somewhere between the driveway and the highway, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger exactly, or sadness. It was like I had just unhooked a heavy chain from around my neck for the first time in my life. I wasn't going to beg to be part of her world anymore. I wasn't going to let manipulation or guilt keep me small. I was free, and I wasn't going back. What I didn't know yet, what made me laugh later, bitter and sweet at the same time, was that freedom wasn't just going to be emotional. It was about to be a whole lot more real. 3 days later, sitting in a tiny coffee shop flipping through real estate listings on my phone, I saw it. The house, her rental, and right next to it, in bold letters, "For sale." I stared at the listing, my heart thudding so loud I could barely hear the Christmas music playing overhead. The universe had just handed me a key, literally, and for once in my life, I was ready to take it. I didn't even think twice. My thumb hit the call button so fast it felt like muscle memory. The realtor answered on the second ring. She sounded chipper, probably thinking I was just another curious window shopper, but my voice didn't waver when I said, "I'm very interested in the property on Sycamore Lane. How soon can I see it?" She offered me a showing for later that afternoon. I agreed without hesitation. I sat there a few minutes after hanging up, staring out the coffee shop window, trying to wrap my head around what I had just set in motion. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about reclaiming a part of myself I didn't even realize I had been giving away for years. Standing up from that wobbly little table felt like standing up for my whole damn life. When I got to the house later that day, I didn't knock. I didn't have to. The place was empty. Silent. Almost eerily so. Mum and my sister must have gone back to their own lives after Christmas. I walked through each room slowly, my boots clicking against the hardwood floors. The living room where she humiliated me. The kitchen where she pretended I didn't exist. The hallway where she had shouted my name like it was a curse. Every wall, every doorway still smelled like cinnamon and something else, bitterness maybe. I could almost hear her voice in the air, telling me I wasn't enough, would never be enough. But now, for the first time, I realised something important. Her voice didn't matter here anymore. Mine did. The realtor met me at the front door a few minutes later. She smiled wide when she saw me, shaking off the cold. You know, she said as she clicked open her clipboard. The owner is looking for a quick sale. The tenant's lease is month to month. Shouldn't be any trouble transferring ownership. I nodded, feeling something strange tighten in my chest. Hope? Maybe. Or the first taste of real freedom. We sat in the tiny dining room and went over the paperwork. The asking price was more than fair. I had saved for years. Working jobs my family laughed at. Scrimping and scraping. Building something they never thought I could. And now I had enough. Enough to say yes. Enough to finally choose myself. By the end of the meeting, I had an agreement in hand and a closing date set for 3 days later. It was happening. I was doing this. As I drove back to my apartment, the winter sky bleeding gold and pink over the frozen fields, I couldn't stop smiling. Not a big, gloating smile, just a quiet, steady one, the kind you get when you know you've done something no one can ever take away from you. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not my co-workers, not my few close friends, definitely not my family. This was mine alone. 3 days later, I signed the final papers at the title office. They slid a heavy envelope across the table to me. Deed. Keys. The whole thing, my name, printed clean and official at the top. Claire Elizabeth Morris. It looked beautiful. As I walked back out into the parking lot, clutching that envelope to my chest, I thought about how many Christmases I had spent wishing for things that would never come. Wishing for a mum who would be proud of me, wishing for a home that felt safe. Now, for the first time, I wasn't wishing anymore. I had built my own miracle. The next step wasn't easy. It never is. When you're untangling yourself from a toxic family, legally, I had to notify the tenant, my mother, that the property had been sold and that her month-to-month lease would be ending. I could have hired a lawyer to send it, could have made it all cold and formal, but I didn't. Instead, I wrote a short letter, handwritten on clean white paper. Dear tenant, I wrote, keeping it simple and polite. The property at 1845 Sycamore Lane has been sold. As the new owner, I am exercising the right to terminate the current month-to-month lease, effective 30 days from receipt of this letter. Thank you for your cooperation. No name, no emotion, just facts. I drove over myself, walked up to the front porch where only a week before I had been thrown out like trash, and slid the letter through the mail slot. Standing there, I took a deep breath. Snow was still thick on the ground, glittering under the streetlights. My car engine purred quietly behind me. I didn't knock. I didn't wait for her to open the door. I didn't need anything from her anymore. As I turned and walked away, for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the heavy weight of her anger, her disappointment, or her manipulation on my shoulders. I was just me, and I was free. The first sign that Mum had gotten the letter came 2 days later. I was folding laundry on my couch when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with her name. I watched it ring until it stopped. No voicemail, just silence. An hour later, another call, then a text, call me now. No apology, No explanation, just a demand. Like always, I didn't answer. The next morning, she showed up outside my apartment building. I saw her through the window, standing next to her car, arms crossed, pacing like a trapped animal, my stomach twisted. But I didn't move. I didn't rush out to explain myself, to soothe her, to make it better. I had spent too many years trying to earn a love that came with conditions I could never meet. This time, I stayed exactly where I was. Eventually, she left. Another string of texts came after. How could you do this to me? You're heartless. After everything I've done for you. Each message was like a little spark trying to start a fire, hoping I'd jump back into the same old dance guilt. Apology, begging for forgiveness, but the sparks died before they ever reached me. I sat there holding my phone, feeling numb at first, then calm. There it was again, that quiet sense of standing tall inside my own skin. For once, I wasn't reacting to her. I was standing up for myself. Still, the guilt tried to creep in. It always does when you're unlearning years of emotional manipulation. I had to remind myself, it's not cruel to protect your peace. It's not betrayal to save yourself. Over the next few weeks, she tried different tactics. One day, she was furious, texting in all caps, telling me I was ungrateful and selfish. The next, she tried pity. I have nowhere to go. How could you do this to your own mother? The worst was when she dangled the tiniest crumbs of affection, writing things like, I miss you, come over for dinner, let's talk, gark. Old me would have run straight back. Old me would have believed her, but standing in my tiny kitchen, reading those words, I realised something. She didn't miss me. She missed controlling me, and I was done being her puppet. The 30 days came and went. On the last afternoon, I drove by the house. Her car was gone. The windows were dark. There was a small pile of trash bags stacked neatly by the curb. It was over. She was gone. The house was mine. I parked across the street and just sat there for a while, letting it sink in. Not just the fact that I had legally reclaimed the place where so many of my worst memories lived, but that I had emotionally reclaimed myself. I wasn't the desperate little girl anymore. Standing in the doorway, begging to be seen, I was a grown woman who had taken every ugly thing thrown at her and built something stronger out of it. Eventually, I got out of the car and walked up the driveway. The snow had melted into cold patches on the sidewalk. The lock clicked when I turned the key. Inside, the house felt hollow and strange, like a stage after the actors have all gone home. There were a few scraps left behind, a broken chair, some chipped-in dishes, but mostly it was empty. Just walls, just space. I leaned against the doorframe and closed my eyes. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt quiet. It wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about choosing. And I had chosen myself. I walked through each room slowly, touching the doorways, the counters, the windows. I imagined repainting the walls, tearing out the old carpet, filling the place with laughter and warmth, the kind I had spent my whole childhood craving. For the first time, the house didn't feel like a graveyard. It felt like a blank page, a place to write a new story, mine. The first thing I did was open every single window. The air inside the house was thick and stale, like it was holding on to every harsh word that had ever been spoken between those walls. I stood in the middle of the living room and let the cold January air whip through the place, cleansing it in a way I didn't even know I needed. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a symbol of survival, a symbol of standing up, a symbol of freedom. The next few weeks were a blur of scrubbing, hauling, painting. I ripped up the carpet with my bare hands, yanking it free from the nails that had held it down for decades. The same way I'd finally pulled myself free from the toxic family ties that tried to keep me small. Every paint stroke across the walls felt like stitching up an old wound. I didn't have a lot of money left after buying the place. But I didn't need fancy things. I bought a second-hand couch, a little kitchen table with 2 chairs, some warm blankets and soft lights. Piece by piece, the house started to change, and so did I. Some nights, when the work was done, I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and just listen to the quiet. No screaming, no cold silences, no sharp, cutting remarks pretending to be just jokes, just me and the steady beat of my own heart. Still standing, still healing. It was in those quiet hours that the memories would creep in. I'd remember sitting at that same window as a kid, watching the snow fall, wishing someone would notice I was hurting. I'd remember birthday parties where no one showed up, Christmas mornings when my presents were an afterthought. I'd remember the countless times I swallowed my pain, just to keep the peace. Sometimes the memories made my chest ache so bad I had to close my eyes and breathe through it. But even that pain was different now. It didn't control me anymore. It didn't define me. It was just part of the story, not the whole thing. One afternoon, while I was fixing a broken cabinet door in the kitchen, I found an old photo tucked way in the back of a drawer. It was a picture of me at about 10 years old, sitting on the front porch of the house, knees scraped, holding a popsicle, grinning like the world hadn't gotten to me yet. I stared at that little girl for a long time. She didn't know yet how hard it was going to get, how many times she'd be told she wasn't enough, how many times she'd have to pick herself up off the floor alone, but she also didn't know yet how strong she would become. I taped the photo to the inside of the cabinet door, not because I wanted to live in the past, but because I wanted to honour the kid who never gave up, even when it would have been easier to just stop believing. The truth is, healing doesn't happen in one big, dramatic moment. It's not like you suddenly wake up one morning and everything feels fine. Healing is slow. Healing is scrubbing floors you didn't mess up. Healing is repainting walls you didn't stain. Healing is choosing to build a life even when the foundation you were given was cracked and broken. Some days, I still felt the sting of betrayal. Some days, I still missed the mother I wished I had. But more and more, those feelings didn't control me. They just passed through, like a storm that didn't have the power to rip my roof off anymore. One evening, maybe a month after moving in, I stood out on the front porch, looking at the street lights flickering on. It was chilly, but I stayed there a long time. Neighbours walked by, bundled in jackets, giving me little nods and smiles. I nodded back, wrapping my sweater tighter around me. This was my home now, not just legally, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. This was the place I had claimed for myself. After a lifetime of being told I didn't deserve anything of my own, and standing there under the winter sky, for the first time, maybe ever, I believed it. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. Spring came early that year. The snow melted faster than usual, leaving behind muddy lawns and tiny green shoots pushing up through the thawed ground. It felt fitting somehow, like even the earth around me was trying to start over. I spent those early days of March fixing up the backyard, pulling weeds, turning the dirt over with my hands, planting a few cheap flower seeds just to see if they'd take. It was slow work, messy work, but it was mine. One afternoon, while I was out back struggling with an old, rusted shovel, my neighbour from 2 doors down wandered over. Her name was Mrs. Jenkins, a small, wiry woman with bright eyes and a sharper wit. "You bought the old Taylor place?" "Huh?" she said, smiling as she leaned on the fence. I nodded, brushing dirt from my gloves. "Yeah, trying to make it feel like home." She chuckled softly. "Takes time, but you're doing good. Honey, real good." It was such a simple thing, a casual kindness, but standing there, in my dirt-stained jeans and messy hair, it hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how long it had been since someone told me I was doing good, not good enough. Not good, despite everything. Just good. After she left, I sat on the back steps for a long time, feeling the warmth of that small moment seep into the cold places inside me that still sometimes ached. Healing isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's in the tiny moments when you realize you're not surviving anymore, you're actually living. By April, the house looked different. The chipped siding was repainted. The broken porch swing was replaced. Inside, the rooms were filled with little signs of life books stacked by the bed, fresh towels in the bathroom, a kitchen that smelled like coffee and homemade bread. I wasn't pretending anymore. This wasn't a set I built to impress anyone. This was mine, messy, real, imperfect, and beautiful. Mum tried to reach out a few more times. Around Easter, she left a voicemail. "I heard you bought the house? Must be nice. Having everything handed to you for once." I didn't call her back. Another time, she mailed a card, no return address, with just 4 words inside. "You always were selfish." I threw it in the trash without opening it a second time. It stung, sure, the way old wounds always do when they're poked. But it didn't undo anything. It didn't tear down the walls I had rebuilt brick by brick around my heart, not to shut love out, but to keep cruelty from getting back in. It didn't change the fact that I was free. Some part of me had always known that cutting ties would hurt, that walking away from a toxic family wasn't just a clean break, it was a slow, aching kind of grief. Grieving the mother I wanted but never had. Grieving the version of family I used to dream about when I was little. But grief, I learned, can sit beside hope. It can share space with peace. It doesn't have to drown you unless you let it. I wasn't drowning anymore. One Sunday in late May, I invited a few friends over for a backyard barbecue. They weren't people I had known my whole life. They weren't blood relatives. They were just good, kind souls who laughed easy and stayed late and brought homemade potato salad and left their shoes at the door without being asked. As the sun dipped low and the sky turned that perfect shade of pink and gold, I looked around at the mismatched chairs and the half-burned burgers and the plastic cups scattered everywhere, and I thought, this is family, not the people who share your DNA, not the ones who demand your loyalty while crushing your spirit. Family is the people who show up, the people who see you, the people who make space for you to be exactly who you are, with no conditions, no shame, no strings attached. It took me a long time to find that. It took losing everything I thought I needed, but standing there in the soft evening light, barefoot in my backyard, surrounded by laughter and love I had built from scratch, I realized I hadn't lost anything worth keeping. I had only lost the weight that was holding me down, and now, finally, I was free to rise. Life doesn't always hand us the family we deserve. Sometimes, the people who should protect us end up being the ones who hurt us the most. But healing starts the moment we choose ourselves not out of anger, but out of love for the person we're becoming. Claire's journey reminds us that standing up to a toxic family isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your peace, your voice, and your future. Sometimes, walking away from what breaks you is the bravest thing you'll ever do. And sometimes, the home you've been searching for isn't a place at all. It's the life you build with your own 2 hands. If this story touched you, made you think of your own journey, or just reminded you how strong you are, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. And if you believe in stories of healing, freedom, and strength after betrayal, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real-life journeys. Thank you for spending time with me today. You are stronger than you know, and your story isn't over yet.